Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new podcast in Café Galletas y Pan Dulce. I'm your host, Miranda, and this time we're going to be trying something new and a bit different for this episode. This time, we're only focusing on audio, which means that you won't see me talking to a guest, nor you will see me at the supermarket like a couple of podcasts ago, nor you will exactly see me drinking my all time favorite black coffee. Instead, this time you're simply going to focus on my voice and in the topic that we will be discussing today, which will be about Mexican traditional drinks. And we'll combine it with a little bit of culture and talk about Mexican superstitions. You may have some of these superstitions as well in your own culture, and some may be new to you. Same thing with the Mexican drinks. Some of them you may already know them, and some of them are going to be new. A quick and gentle disclaimer here. We'll be talking a little bit about alcoholic drinks. So if that topic's a sensitive one for you, I just want you to be aware of it. But remember to always drink abiding to the laws in your own country or state, and remember to always drink responsibly. We want to be careful around here, guys. So please be mindful. But if you're not much into drinks with alcohol, that's okay, because we're also going to be talking about non-alcoholic drinks. So please sit down, relax, enjoy your black coffee or whatever you choose to drink, enjoy some cookies or sweet bread, and just enjoy the podcast. So before starting, here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to talk to you about two different kinds of drinks, a non-alcoholic and an alcoholic beverage for each Mexican superstition. So we'll start with the drinks. So let's begin with, I think, the most usual and typical thing that you'll find around here in Mexico, and that is agua de Jamaica. Jamaica is basically the hibiscus flower, and this kind of water is super delicious. It's extremely refreshing, and its flavor is kind of particular because it's not sweet but not bitter. It's kind of like something in between. Personally, I really love this water, especially without sugar, because that's the real way of enjoying this agua, and it's also perfect for the summer, especially for this season actually. So I recommend drinking this kind of water during lunch. I think it's the perfect time for it. But now I want to tell you about what is here in Mexico known as the God's drink. This is an alcoholic drink and it's called pulque. This drink is very particular and not everyone likes it. I personally do love it. Well, I kind of love it. I haven't tried it like many times, but I really, really like it. But now, quick disclaimer here. In Mexico, the drinking age is 18 years old. So that's when you're basically turning, I don't know, like a grown up and you're basically responsible. So yeah, 18 years old is when you're allowed to also vote and to like register to the law and then also drink, of course. So that's when you're allowed to drink. I'm 23 years old, so I'm above the required age both here in Mexico and the United States. So we're good. We're good around here. But anyways, I've tried pulque before and I do really like it. Pulque comes in so many various flavors. You can literally ask for a banana flavor pulque, and I'm more than sure that they're gonna have it. The one I tried was pulque de mazapan or marzipan flavored pulque. Now the thing about pulque is that it's served in kind of like a mild temperature, not too hot, not too cold. And here's why some people don't like it, and it's due to its texture. You're probably imagining a drink that is refreshing and liquid, kind of like any alcoholic beverage, pretty much. But pulque is more of a thick drink, and it's kind of like gooey. It's a little bit gooey. Now, where does pulque come from? So according to the National Library of Medicine, and I also proved this myself, pulque comes from something called aguamiel or mead that is extracted from the agave or maguey plants. Maguey is kind of like a fruit. So pulque, in conclusion, is honestly a very flavored drink. Not everyone likes it, and that's okay. Actually, my parents don't like it. I'm the only one here that likes it. But not everyone can drink the God's drink. So just kidding. But now let's move over to our first Mexican superstition, and is that if a tortilla puffs up, you're gonna get married. Now, there's a variation to this superstition, but the one I know and the one I grew up with was that when warming up a tortilla on the stove, if it pops up, it means that you're gonna get married. And I think this is kind of like a funny superstition, and I believed on it when I was a kid. But as for the variation, I know of this superstition. I think it was kind of like if when making hot chocolate you get foam out from it, you're gonna get married. So that's kind of like a superstition. Either you get foam in your chocolate or a tortilla pops up, you're gonna get married. But now let's head into our next group of drinks and superstitions. So let's first talk about a non-alcoholic beverage, and that is agua de horchata. We have another agua right here. So this one's also pretty straightforward, like our previous drink, which was agua de Jamaica. And basically, agua de horchata is made with rice and cinnamon, and of course sugar, and I think a little bit of milk. Not very sure about that, but I'm pretty sure it has a little bit of a milky flavor right there. But this one's also very refreshing drink. It's perfect for the summer. It's very sweet, and it tastes better when cold. Now, that was the agua de horchata, very straightforward. As I mentioned, this one doesn't need further explanation. Oh, but I actually want to add something. So agua de horchata, basically, it's kind of like a similar thing to a Mexican dessert called arroz con leche, which is basically milk with rice. So I don't know if you've ever tried it. It's super delicious. I personally love it so much. Um, and yeah, it's basically you kind of like boil white rice and you add milk, you add cinnamon. I think you can add prunes if I'm not mistaken to it if you like. But it's kind of like it's super delicious, people. Like it's sugary, it's so delicious. It's better when you eat it warm. And yeah, it's just basically very delicious. And it's kind of like similar to agua de horchata. So if you ever have the chance to try arroz con leche, which is the dessert, you're pretty much getting agua de horchata from there. But now I want to talk about another alcoholic Mexican drink. So there's this stereotype of drinking tequila in Mexico, but I'm not going to talk about tequila because everyone already knows tequila. Instead, I want to talk about mezcal, which can be confused with tequila. So here's the difference between these two. So according to the Overproof website, is that tequila is obtained from a blue agave specifically, while mezcal can be made from more than 30 different types of agave. Agave is kind of like a plant. So now you should know that here in Mexico, there are so many different types of agave, and it's crazy, honestly. And if you remember, pulque is also obtained from an agave plant, but not the same one as tequila or mezcal. So there are literally so many agave plants. It's ridiculous. But yeah, you basically can make alcoholic drinks with that. I haven't personally tried mezcal. Not sure why. I've tried maracuya mezcal, which is maracuya. I forgot what that is in English. I think there's a word specifically for it. But it's super delicious, honestly. It's very sweet. I haven't really tried the mezcal as like the original mezcal. But I'm pretty sure it's kind of like a dry kind of like alcoholic drink. Not very sure, but the one I tried was very sweet. You barely can taste the alcohol, which is pretty dangerous, honestly, because if you mix sweetness or sugar with alcohol, it's not gonna be good. But yeah, as I said, I haven't personally tried the original mezcal. Not sure why, but I always identified my grandma with mezcal because she's always like, hijita, ¿me sirves un caballito de mezcal? Which is basically is basically her asking any of us in her family to serve her some mezcal in a caballito. Caballito is a type of a very small glass. So yeah, that's how you serve mezcal in a caballito. But now let's move over to another superstition. Si te barres los pies, te vas a casar con un viudo. So basically, it's about that if someone casually sweeps your feet with obviously a broom, you're gonna get married to a widowed man or a widowed woman. I remember perfectly believing in this superstition when I was a little kid that I'll always avoid my mom whenever she cleaned the house with a broom, just because I wanted to avoid having my feet swept and have the curse of marrying a widowed person when I grew older, which is obviously not a curse. If you fall in love with a widowed person, that's okay. That's how that's how life is. But yeah, I used to be scared of that when I was a kid. Now let's move over to our third group, starting with the agua de tamarindo. We have another agua, people. So tamarindo is basically a plant. Its flavor is kind of sour, and actually, if you look at Mexican popular candies, you're gonna see that most of them have tamarindo flavor, sorry, and it's generally mixed with chili. To be honest with you, I don't like tamarindo. I really don't like it. I don't know why. I never did. But I do know that agua de tamarindo is also very refreshing, like agua de Jamaica or agua de horchata. Now, I mentioned that we usually combine tamarindo with chili in Mexican popular candies, but if you want to drink agua de tamarindo, don't worry, it's not going to contain any chili. Just to let you know, in case you were already freaking out a little bit, because I know that um, there's also this stereotype of people, of Mexican people, eating a lot of chili. But don't worry, no, doesn't this agua doesn't contain any chili, unless you want to, of course, add a little bit of chili on it. But yeah, no, it doesn't contain chili. But now let's move over to our alcoholic drink, and that is the carajillo. So I absolutely love this one. Carajillo is basically a mixture of black coffee and some sort of alcoholic drink. The way I know how to prepare it is that they use a liquor called licor del 43 or 43 liquor, and they pour a little bit of it into a cup with black coffee. So now the carajillo is not 100% Mexican. It was actually brought from Spain during the time of the conquest, but it was fully embraced by the Mexican culture, and now it's a very typical thing to drink around here. It's actually very easy to make, and honestly, it can either be you can either drink it hot or cold. I actually prefer it cold. So I mean, you just add a little bit of black coffee, a little bit of licor del 43, a little bit of ice, and there you have it. It's actually pretty easy to make. But now let's move over to a kind of funny superstition, and that is, and well, I'm gonna say it in Spanish: clavar un cuchillo en la tierra para que no llueva, which means nail a knife into the ground to avoid the rain. My entire family believes on this one, and I believe on it too to this day. So every single time that I have a gathering with my family and we're outside on the garden, we're always aware of the weather, especially during this season, which is summer. And if we see the rain clouds approaching, we take a knife from the kitchen and nail it on the ground to scare off the rain. It's kind of like it's supposed to work. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, but it's a fun superstition if you ever want to try it. If you're ever with your family at a gathering and you see that it's gonna rain, just grab a knife from the kitchen and just stick it on the ground. Literally, it's supposed to make it stop raining or kind of like scares the rain off. But I mean, now I'm gonna move over to another drink that it's more typical in actually southern Mexico, but I think it deserves an honorable mention as I seriously absolutely love this drink. People, seriously, if you ever go to southern Mexico, you have to try it. Seriously, I'm serious here. So make way for agua de chaya, another agua. So agua, by the way, people, it means water, in case you didn't know. But yeah, agua de chaya. Now, even if you're Mexican, you probably haven't heard much about this drink unless you're from the south. I got to know about this drink on my visit to Merida in Yucatan, which is, of course, in southern Mexico. So let me explain to you what chaya is. Chaya is basically a plant. It's a Mayan plant. By the way, if you didn't know, the Mayans were an ancient civilization in Mexico. But let's go back to the chaya. You can consume this plant in small quantities because, according to the Mexican government's website, as well as according to my father's friend who lives in Merida and who introduced the agua de chaya to my parents and myself, this plant, when not eaten correctly, can release a toxic substance similar to cyanide. So, to enjoy better this plant, it's better to have it in small quantities inside a drink. So now you can drink agua de chaya by mixing the plant with orange, lime, or pineapple juice. I had the opportunity to try all three of them on my trip to Merida, and I must say that the winner has to be the agua de chaya with pineapple. Really, people, it's so good, especially on a hot day after visiting an archaeological site. Because down in southern Mexico, there are so many people, not so many people, of course, there are so many people, but there are just so many archaeological sites to visit. And it's very, very hot, especially during the season of between like April and May. It's very, very hot. So having agua de chaya with pineapple after visiting the pyramids, for example, it's super refreshing. So it's extremely refreshing. You can find it in pretty much any restaurant. So if you ever go to southern Mexico, seriously, people, you need to try this agua. But now let's move over to our alcoholic drink, which I'm very sure you already recognize or have heard about it, but it's really good, and that's a michelada. So I'm not gonna spend much time talking about it because it's very straightforward, but it's basically a beer mixed with a bunch of different things. Now, people in Mexico have their own way of preparing a michelada. The way I know of is that you take a beer, any kind of a beer, can be light beer, dark beer, or crafted beer, and you mix it with clamato, which is basically tomato juice. And then you add a little bit of lime juice, some English sauce, which for you will be the equivalent to Worcestershire sauce. And if you want some kind of spicy salsa, you can add some Tabasco or pretty much anything. It's a very straightforward type of drink, and it's not very hard to make. It is pretty much very refreshing. But now let's talk about our next superstition. I'm pretty sure this superstition exists in other cultures, so leave a comment if that's the case. But it's basically not walking under a ladder because it attracts bad luck. So ever since I was a kid, I've always believed in this superstition. I still believe in it, so that's why I always try to avoid walking underneath ladders, not only because I don't want to attract bad luck into my life, but I mean, imagine there's a person on top of that ladder and he or she falls. I don't want the person to fall on top of me. So of course I'm gonna avoid ladders at all costs. But yeah, that's another superstition here in Mexico. But yeah, leave a comment if this superstition applies for your culture as well. But now let's move over to our fifth group. We've already talked enough about aguas, which again, by the way, agua means water. If you didn't remember, aguas is a plural form. So now I want to talk about something a lot more sweeter, a lot sweeter, seriously, but super comforting, especially during the cold day in winter, and that is the champurrado. So now the thing the champurrado is made with, it will sound kind of like a little bit weird to many, but I promise it's super delicious. Champurrado is a chocolate kind of drink, and it's made with, of course, chocolate, but also with tortilla dough. So yeah, tortilla dough. Now, if you ever come to Mexico, if you go to a tortilleria, which is a place where they make tortillas, you see that they make tortillas with a certain kind of dough that is made with corn. So that same dough is used to make champurrado. My mom actually knows and has taught me how to do it. And basically, just put inside a pot with some hot water. You place the amount of dough you wish for your champurrado. You mix it well until it becomes liquid, and then you add your favorite kind of chocolate tablets. And then you add some cinnamon and piloncillo. And if you remember from a past episode, piloncillo is basically brown sugar transformed into a cone or cylinder. It's very natural. It's actually, I think, healthier than most sugars if you want to kind of like a sweetener. But yeah, and now the thing about the cinnamon is that it has to be cinnamon sticks, not the cinnamon powder, because cinnamon is used only to give some flavor to the champurrado. So it's only just find some cinnamon sticks, put it in the champurrado, and just, yeah, let it boil for a little bit, and you have your champurrado. It's absolutely delicious. Seriously, people. But now, following our champurrado drink, we'll talk about our alcoholic drink. And in my opinion, and I'll later tell you why, it's not very yummy. I'm talking about another typical drink from southern Mexico, but I had the opportunity to try it, and I thought it was going to be interesting to add it into this episode. So I'm talking about the Xtaventún. I'm not very sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, because that's a Mayan term. So the Mayans, again, ancient civilization in Mexico. So I'm not very sure if I'm pronouncing that very well. So Xtaventún, this drink is more typical around Yucatan Peninsula and is one of the Mayan sacred liquors. So according to the Pichan website, Pichan website, the Xtaventún is made from the honey of a flower from its same name, and the honey from these flowers is obtained by a species of bees called the Melipona bees, who are native from this region, of course. So this means that this kind of drink is sweet, but here's why I didn't like it. I tried it, I didn't like it. This drink also has an anise. I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, and I'm sorry, anise lovers, but I hate that. I don't know, is it kind of like a species? I think it's kind of like a species. But yeah, it's kind of like a spice. Sorry, not a species. It's kind of like a spice. I'm not very sure if it's a spice. I don't know what it is, but I don't like it, people. I don't know why I really can't stand it. Anise is a flavor that is just very strong for me that no matter how hard you try to hide it in a meal, I always manage to detect it for some reason. Regardless, maybe you don't mind anise too much like me. So if you ever visit the Yucatan Peninsula, I strongly recommend you try this drink. Again, it's called Staventun. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that very well, but yeah, I don't like that drink. But moving on to our next superstition, and it's gonna talk about eyelashes. So I'm not very sure if this could be considered a superstition or just a game, but I remember back in third grade learning about this, and ever since I believed in it. This superstition is basically about that if an eyelash falls off from your eye and you manage to catch it, you have to place it between your thumb and your index finger, and then you have to kind of like squeeze it between your fingers and guessing which finger it's gonna end up in. So if you guess right, then you can make a wish and blow your eyelash to make it true. But if you fail and you don't guess right, then nothing happens and you simply end up with nothing, just like that. But yeah, it was kind of like a game when I was in third grade. But yeah, I still believe in that superstition actually, people. So whenever my eyelash, like a small eyelash from my eye falls off, I kind of like just catch it between my fingers and then I try to guess in which finger it will end up on. And then I make a wish if I guess right. But now let's move on to some coffee again. So this is a different kind of coffee and it's mainly called here as café de olla or pod coffee, if you want to translate it. It's super straightforward. You heat some water up in a pot and add some powdered coffee, whichever you like. But then you add some cinnamon sticks for extra flavor and piloncillo. If you notice, we pretty much love piloncillo here in Mexico in everything. And I must say that honestly, it's kind of like a healthy choice if you're looking for some natural sweetener again. But yeah, now the point of de olla is that you can make it in any kind of pot that you like, but the original point of it is to make it inside a clay pot. This is because, and you can also count it as a superstition, it tastes better when being served. So I've tried café de olla in both a clay and a normal pot, and honestly, I cannot really remember if it tasted different. So I guess I'm gonna have to try it again and know, and just to kind of like know the difference, if there's any difference, and then I'll come back to you. But moving on to our final alcoholic drink, and that it's honestly super yummy, but very, very sweet, and that's the rompope. So rompope is kind of like equivalent to what you know as eggnog, and it's made with egg yolks, milk, and sugar, just like eggnog. However, the difference here is that while eggnog is made with vanilla extract, rompope is made of almonds, nuts, pistachio, or piñón, which, if you remember, it's a kind of seed that comes from the pine trees. So I must admit, rompope is super yummy, but it's more usual to drink it after a meal, and it's considered a digestive, which is not something I fully agree with. I don't fully agree with it due to its thick texture and sugary flavor. For me, rompope is better to have it together with some kind of dessert, such as ice cream, cookies, cakes, flanes or pudding, as you know it, or even jelly. But however you want to have it, I recommend you try it. It's actually a very comforting taste. But now, following our alcoholic drink, let's head over to our sixth superstition of today's episode, and that is something concerning birthdays and birthday wishes. And it's that when you make a wish, you have to turn off all your candles with just one blow. This will ensure that your wish will definitely come true. And if you don't blow all your candles at once, then, well, what can I say? Your wish will simply not come true. Like, nothing will happen. Kind of like the last superstition we talked about. But I do believe in this superstition to this current day. So whenever it's my birthday, I always try to make sure I blow enough air out of my lungs to turn off all the candles so my wishes may come true. Now, I cannot really tell you if this superstition is true, as I can barely remember what I wished for in my last birthday. So I cannot really tell you my wishes have come true or not. But keeping up with our comforting kind of drinks, and in this next category, we have something that's super usual to drink for breakfast. Doesn't matter the time of the year, but in my personal opinion, it's more enjoyable during winter, and it's a drink called atole. So maybe you've heard of it and of people drinking atole together while eating tamales. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me give you a little bit of context. So first of all, tamales are made from corn dough. And they come in so many different flavors, from spicy, like rajas, which is a kind of chili that honestly is not so spicy. Here's my Mexican model. To sweet, like chocolate or blackberry with cheese, to a salty one, like just beans. So tamales come in such wide variety of flavors, and they're usually enjoyed with atole, which is kind of like just like champurrado. They're made with corn dog, and then sweetened with piloncillo. The difference between atole and champurrado is that champurrado are made exclusively with chocolate, only chocolate, while atole can come in strawberry flavors. In the strawberry flavor, vanilla, rice, such as arroz con leche or rice with milk. Remember what I said while presenting agua de horchata to you? Or it can come in fruity flavors such as guava, coconut, pineapple, and just so many more. But I've seen at the supermarket those small packages to make atole with just boiled water. But honestly, people, I've tried them and they don't taste as good as a typical made one with corn dog. So if you ever want to try atole, I recommend buying them from one of the local stands that you can find in the streets. I think they're the best ones if you ever come to Mexico, of course. But I'm very sure sugar and soda lovers by now are probably going to be like, hey, don't you have any good recommendations for a carbonated sugary drink? So, well, now that we're done with our alcoholic drinks, I want to give you a recommendation for a soda that you may like if you ever visit Mexico. Personally, I don't drink sodas anymore. I actually stopped drinking sodas probably a year ago. But let me tell you that if I ever get offered this next soda, I won't be able to say no, which it's just so good. And that's the Sangria Señorial. Now, here's why Sangria Señorial is super yummy. And it's because it's kind of like a representation of an alcoholic drink, also called sangria, which is made with wine and lime juice, which honestly, it's very good. By the way, I've tried it and it's really good. But opposite to the normal alcoholic sangria is that this soda, Sangria Señorial, doesn't have alcohol. It's basically also made with grapes, like wine, and with lime juice, just like the alcoholic drink. But again, doesn't have alcohol, and instead it's made with cane sugar, just like the Mexican Coke. The sangria señorial is honestly better drank with ice on a hot summer day. It's super good, people. I really tell you, it's actually really worth it. But moving on to our almost last superstition for today's podcast. So generally, when you accidentally hit any part of your body, a human's natural reaction is to rub the area where you hit yourself, whether it was your arm, your leg, or your elbow. Now, here in Mexico, it said that if you hit your elbow with anything, like let's say the corner of a table or the wall or a door, it's a meaning for money and good fortune. That as long as you don't rub your elbow to ease the pain. Otherwise, it is said that you're scaring off the good fortune. So I will admit that I do believe in this superstition. So you heard me, people. Next time that you hit your elbow accidentally, don't rub it to ease the pain. Instead, just hang in there and endure the pain for a little bit if you want the money to come to you. But let's move on to our final group of Mexican drinks and superstition. So we all love Christmas, right? I think, well, almost everyone, I think. Well, let me tell you that during Christmas time in Mexico, it's super usual to drink something hot, fruity, and refreshing. I'm talking about ponche or punch if you want to translate it. Now, here's the thing about ponche, and is that every single family here in Mexico will have its own way of preparing it. Here I'm gonna share the way my grandma and my mom prepare it. So for this, of course, you're gonna have to boil some water, and the most typical fruits that you're gonna find in pretty much every region are apples, guava, hibiscus flower or jamaica, tamarindo, which if you remember it's a kind of plant, sugarcane, and tecojote. I think I explained what tecojote is in a past episode, but just as a reminder, tecojotes are very small orange fruits that are somewhat sour, but they taste very good in ponche. My grandma and my mom add cinnamon to the ponche and sometimes a little bit of piloncillo. And my grandma sometimes adds something that is commonly called as piquete, which if you want to add a little bit of fun to your ponche, you can add a small portion of either tequila, whiskey, mezcal, rum, or brandy. So I swear, people, there's nothing better in Christmas time than a very nice hot ponche on a cold night, because if you didn't know, it gets pretty cold in Mexico. I mean, maybe not as cold as places like Canada or Alaska, where you're gonna get tons of snow, but it's still very, very cold here in Mexico. But now moving on to another drink that can be either drunk hot or cold, and that's chocolate with cinnamon. Chocolate. Chocolate with cinnamon, chili, or pepper. So I actually want to throw in a little bit of a story time here. And I want to talk about my experience getting to know this kind of chocolate. So this happened when I visited Merida in Yucatan, and back when I was still in high school. So my dad had some friends living down there. So we just decided to visit them for spring break. His friends took my parents and I and myself to this chocolate museum, which is called Choco Story. And it's basically kind of like an eco park where you're gonna be able to see local animals from the region. And along the way where you're visiting the museum, you get the opportunity to make your own hot chocolate made out from cacao seeds, which are super important for the Mayan people. And after you make your own hot chocolate, you get the opportunity to flavor it with different things such as cinnamon, chili, pepper, and of course sugar. So I remember I decided to add chili to mine back then, and not gonna lie, I think I got too excited with the chili because my chocolate ended up being super spicy. And it's the kind of spiciness that you feel it tickling your throat and makes you cough, and at the same time, kind of like spicy. So it was very comfortable, but it was still very, very good. So, I mean, there you have it, people. If you ever want to visit Merida, seriously, go to this museum. It's beautiful. You're not only going to learn so much, but you'll get to make your own hot chocolate and flavor it to your liking and just get a cool experience. So, also, by the way, at the museum's cafeteria, they sell a kind of cold chocolate that I swear is the most delicious thing I have ever had in my life. But yeah, but let's move over now to our last superstition for today's episode. So I know that what the whole deal with Friday the 13th is in different cultures, including mine. I know all the supposedly bad luck around these kind of days, but people, you may have one bad day, but in Mexico we also consider Tuesday 13th a bad luck day. So I'm not very sure if this applies to the whole Mexican territory, but I assure you, back then, when I was a little girl at school, we were all terrified whenever it was either Tuesday or Friday 13th. So during these days, we weren't allowed to do two kinds of things. Walk beneath a ladder, which brings bad luck, as I previously mentioned, and step on cracks that were out on the streets, or something very bad will happen to a beloved family member. So I don't believe in this anymore, but I remember back when I was a kid, I used to be terrified of this superstition. I remember I'd always be careful when walking out on the streets as I didn't want to step on any cracks that were on the floor. And let me tell you, here in Mexico, we have tons of cracks and holes and bumps on the streets. So that makes it double difficult. But yeah, could this be considered as an urban legend? I don't know, but it's for sure a superstition here in Mexico. But yeah, but there you have it, everyone. 8 different groups with 2 kinds of drinks and 1 superstition. So now you're an expert in Mexican superstition culture, and now you know more about Mexican drinks if you ever want to try an alcoholic or non-alcoholic one. So yeah, if any of the drinks I mentioned along this episode caught your attention and you've never tried it before, please leave a comment telling me which drink you like to try on your next visit to Mexico. Or even if you already tried some of them, comment which was your favorite and why, of course. So remember to always be respectful and kind in the comment section, not only to myself, but to others. But yeah, but that's it from my part for today. Don't forget to join our community and subscribe. Keep enjoying your black coffee or whatever you're drinking, as well as your cookies or your sweet bread. And yeah, I was your host. Well, I'm your host, Miranda. And I'll see you on the next episode of Café, Galletas y Pan Dulce.